Well, very good evening to you and welcome to the program here at Reading Media. This is Reading Unfiltered, one of the programs that we will be undertaking here. And to discuss issues affecting our nation is Mr. Charles Omanga joining me, an advocate of the High Court of the Republic of Kenya and a prolific lawyer. Thank you so much for joining me, Mr. Charles.
Welcome. Thank you very much.
How have you been?
I'm not quite well. Thank you. Yes.
This is the first time you're coming to the show?
Yes. And I'm quite impressed to be here, to have me here this evening.
And that's wonderful. And I want us to take a stock at what is happening in the country. And Penyluo Festival is underway in Migori. Do you think that the cultural aspect of it will come out clearly?
First of all, we must congratulate the organizers of the event and those who are behind that idea, because you've realized that there are a lot of contemporary developments and issues of information technology. We tend to forget so much, pretty much about our traditions and cultures. And therefore, to that end, I think that is the organizers and those who came up with that idea should be commended and greased to their elbows.
Definitely, and indeed. And of course, politics also took shape, and there were a lot of wordings that came out, especially from the Siaya governor, James Orengo, said that the pact between the ODM and Kenya Kwanza, the ODM people should tread carefully. Do you think that should be the case?
Absolutely. I think one thing that should never be lost in us is that we did not really have a very, very structured engagement in terms of how best should we move forward. Because if you look at those things that really birthed the marriage between ODM and Kenya Kwanza coalition was basically based on those extrajudicial killings and those things that came out of the last general elections. And therefore, we shouldn't really take it as if there is something that has been concretized in terms of how to move forward and how the region, basically, if not the ODM as a political party, should going forward. And therefore, I would agree to some extent with the Siaya governor that for those of us that are in the leadership of the Orange Democratic Movement, ODM, must and should at all times be eternally vigilant. Why do I say so? There is a lot of malice because sometimes when people are going through a certain transition, because basically right now we are going through a transition. Mm-hmm. We lost our party leader, may his soul continue to rest in eternal peace. Yes. And therefore there is those who are jostling to actually try and in fact to be seen as if they are really trying to ensure that there are certain things that Raila Odinga had agreed through the ODM with the Kenya Kwanza coalition. And what that means, therefore, is that those whom are tasked, for example, the party leadership, yes, that is the party leader, Honorable Oburu Odinga, the chairman, Gladys Wanga, the Omanga governor, the secretary general, and those whom that are in the National Executive Council of the ODM must ensure that any subsequent steps in terms of ensuring that whether if at all we will have a coalition, yes, a pre-election coalition or a coalition after the coming general election, they must ensure that they must have a sustained and a structured engagement with the general populace, those whom are the members of the Orange Democratic Movement Party. So I think there should not be that hysteria. They should not be hysterical when it comes to how they are trying to move forward this kind of arrangement or this relationship.
And even as at that, the president came out clearly and said that Gladys Wanga, the Homa Bay governor, has been saying that ODM is the largest party south and west of Limpopo and whatnot, but that is yet to be tested. Do you think that the president is right when he said that probably ODM might not be the largest, according to him?
One thing with the president, he's a very, very brilliant politician. So what president is trying to portray is that because he's also a leader of a political party, so he cannot basically outrightly admit that indeed there is a party that larger and bigger than the ruling party. that is UDA, for example, because Kenya Kwanza is a coalition of parties. But when he's saying that, he's trying to prove that indeed the ruling party, which is basically UDA, is the largest party. But why he would also have such a negative comment, if I may say,
yes,
is because if you have seen how rank halls have started, people are really jostling for positions. There is those who want to be seen like they are now the next party leader, or maybe potentially the next kingpin. You've seen people like the Mbadis, the dreamers, those who are always receiving dreams from the late Honorable Prime Minister.
Okay, yeah.
The Wandais, and you see now we have the youthful wing of Sifuna and Honorable Babu Owino. So you see those kind of wrangles within a stronger party that have enjoyed a majority of support across the nation for the past 2 decades is something that cannot be taken for granted. That is why we should be reminded as members of the Orange Democratic Movement Party that we must be very, very careful in terms of the wrangles, the political wrangles, because we should not really have fragments of or groupings within the party. That is when you'll see now people from Western, where ODM equally used to enjoy a majority. You saw for the last election that has started to dwindle.
Yes.
So therefore, it is upon the leadership to ensure that they must pull together, and this is not the time where people should be who dreamt so many times of what should be done or how best we are in broad-based. Those are neither here nor there. But we must really focus on in terms of what are the manifesto of ODM. What did ODM as a party stand for, and what has we achieved in terms of those? Because you see now manifesto is a statement of intent.
Yes.
So all those intentions of the political party as a vehicle of governance, we must and should ensure at all times that we do not betray the faith.
And I just want us to take a political angle on this. There were some by-elections that happened, especially in Kisii and other parts of the Republic. You realize that ODM, in fact in Kisii, ODM did not win those by-elections, and ODM enjoyed a lot of support even in Kisii before Raila Odinga. What's happening?
Those are the telltale signs, and that is why we are here to always in terms of the leadership, because when those kind of things start to be witnessed,
yes,
I can assure you that you will be surprised during the next election that there would be so many members of parliament or members of county assembly, even in the Luo Nyanza, where basically ODM is considered to be its stronghold.
Yes.
Yes.
And when you see ODM is in a working relationship with the Kenya Kwanza government, and some of the developmental agenda that the president has been pushing, you find that it has created a lot of opposition and backblows. What is causing this?
I think what is causing that is that the Kenya Kwanza coalition overpromised. You know, President Ruto came on a platform of that economic emancipation, where the focus basically was the mama mbogas, the informal economy, rather, if I may use that term, if I'm so permitted.
Yes.
And you realize that once they got into power, then this started to shift. So there was no much more of the mamambogas, the bodabodas, the kivinyozis thing.
Yeah.
Then you realize that the issues of tax and the tax bracket now was basically expanded now to include even the mamambogas down there. So you see, and all over the world, you cannot really develop a country by overtaxation. And more importantly, when you are taxing the informal sector, for that matter, then you realize that they would become a bit lethargic. And you see, that is what the united opposition has managed to ride on to drive the anti-government hysteria. And if they are not careful, because there are certain things that reforms that were so drastic in terms of even in the healthcare. You realize now SHA, from NHIF, now Social Health Authority, there are certain things that were really created so fast and drastic reforms that the government did not really take time to actually try to ensure that how can we have a seamless process? How could we ensure that this process feeds into the other without having those breakdowns and those hiccups? And then you realize again, from where I sit, you realize that now again the government a bit refocus, now try to adopt the President Kibaki agenda or the Jubilee agenda, which yes, President Ruto was part of now focusing more on infrastructure. You realize that now the focus is so much on roads, stadiums, we are building stadiums, some airports in every county. Then you realize that when that is done, you realize that there are certain other sectors that suffer. You realize in terms of the security apparatus, then you realize that there is a lot of crimes being committed, and then you realize there is so many lapses in terms of national security. You realize that again, to some extent, education sector is being affected because that focus now has shifted because they cannot be moved together. Then that is why you realize that then there is a lot of issues of privatization that is all of a sudden, certain parastatals are not really profit making, you know. So you realize that you see even now like public universities are now made like business enterprises that should be generating revenue. You see, so those are the kind of things that if the government did not really focus on, that is why they are giving the united opposition an opportunity or an agenda to sell to Kenyans as an alternative.
But now, for example, for the infrastructural development, it has been touted as one of the game changers. For example, the Mausami Tironi Road that will open the western part of the country and create business opportunities up in terms of marketing and whatnot. I mean, that's a game changer. Don't you see it?
Yes, indeed it will. But you see, when you have roads that are leading somewhere, what are the products, what are the industries that this road will be, even if it is fish or what are the industries that are there that would be benefiting from this road? Because you cannot make a super highway into a forest unless you are in a business of cutting trees and logging and maybe burning charcoal, you see? So that would be a game changer in terms of the Western Hemisphere because we already also have the lake. So to me, I think that was a good idea and its launch is something that should be lauded. But again, we must equally be very, very alive to the fact that if what are these things, what are the economic activities in the Western region that basically would really benefit from this thing? Because equally we will still have a standard gauge that would also go up to Malaba, and we will also have that dual carriage, that super highway that will be going there. But what are these economic activities that would be shifting in between? From the coastal region to western, from western to coastal to Nairobi, and to other parts of the world. So we must also, as a region, we must ensure if it is, for example, the fishing industry, whether it is cotton, all the economic activities basically that would benefit, that would drive the economy of the western corridor, done together with the rest of the country.
And for example, when you say that these economic activities, what are some of the things that probably the government should look in, especially industries that will probably benefit the people of the Western region?
You know, for example, you know, there was a time that where I was happy a bit when the president announced the ban on the importation of the furniture from whichever areas. And I thought that the issues of the Kikumi River Tax, the cotton lint industries that were to be revived. Because you see now, those days, they like the Raymond that was based in Eldoret, these are some of the industries that basically were driving the economies of that region and actually indeed the entire nation. So we could have thought it wise, how best can we revive the agricultural sector so that we diversify, even if we are producing sugarcane from Western Kenya and some part of South Nyanza. But how best can we reintegrate the cotton farming, the cotton lint farming, so that we start making these our jackets locally, the sweaters. We used to have very nice and warm clothing, which we can basically export to other markets. For example, the EAC, we can sell some to DRC. It's a very big market for us there. So when we, and even the fillets, these are certain of things that basically if the government and the county government can really have an integrated process where we have what we call the principle of complementarity. How best would we, with the national government, complement actually the economic activities of a particular region, so that whatever we have there, what we do not have, we exchange, we export, so that at least we both have a unified economic approach.
And another thing, another flagship project of the government was the affordable housing plan. And you realize that the opposition has been out and about saying that they will scrap it off.
Why I think that would happen, if you see the partnership, because between the National Social Security Fund, NSSF, that basically is funding basically majority only of this housing, this affordable housing thing. And when you say that there is a big issue with the housing levy, for example, you and me here. When you want a house, and for how long will you be able now to be given that now this was your house? And where, at what location? And if maybe, for example, I would really need a 4-bedroom house, and with a certain how the design and what. You see, there is a lot of things that could have been done best with the issue of the affordable housing. It is a very, very good idea, and then we could have borrowed heavily and do an exchange program and understand how did Malaysia or South Korea, how did they really get it off, and how did it work best for them. Why is it that we have a bit of challenges and certain questions that still remains unanswered to date? So for me, affordable housing is a good project. It's a good idea, but its formative stages and certain questions that were left lingering is a big challenge.
But do you think scrapping it off is a good idea?
I don't really think so, and I think what the government, all those who have the intentions of scrapping it off, would really mean is that those who are in the civil service, for those who are employed, when you decide and dictate that now I will be taking, for example, 2 shillings from your salary each and every month, and then maybe we still also have other alternatives, like we have mortgages, we also have other organizations that maybe you can invest with and then acquire a house of your standard, of whatever nature. So you realize that these are certain some of the outstanding issues that really as a conscious nation we really need to interrogate, so that at least when we have something that is called a universal affordable housing, then indeed it is universal.
Because when you listen how the opposition talks, they say that the government is raiding the pay slips of people, and therefore it shouldn't be that way. What do you think about that?
Why that is necessary is because, for example, when this thing came up, there is those civil servants that were already paying mortgages. Let me ask you, for example, you are already paying a mortgage for your house. Then somebody tell you that there is a housing levy. That it is not. There is nothing that you can say about it. You have to pay. Your mortgage you are also equally still paying for your mortgage. What do you take of that? Therefore, I think there would have been an optional. For example, when you say that you pay for the universal health, and that those who are in certain health schemes, you have your Jubilee insurance, you have whichever IPA, whichever that are heritage, that is offering for you, that are covering you and your kids. Then someone tells you that you must pay for this one so that it can take care of other Kenyans that are not able to pay for their medical schemes. And then again, at the same time, you realize that these particular individuals, even those who then you still find that there is a lot of hiccups with the system itself. So that such that when you go there, you cannot get those services. What do you make of that? So I think it is just time. We really need, we have to reinterrogate some of these things, some of these projects, so that we make them more people-oriented to an extent that people would basically accept it even without questioning. Because if you see how it works and the manner in which it is brought or launched, and all those outstanding issues that were that need to be addressed are so addressed.
Okay, yeah, that's good. And when you listen to the president speak, and more recently, he has been saying that he wants to transform Kenya to a first-class country, first world country, and comparing Kenya to the Asian tigers, the likes of Korea, South Korea that is, and the likes of Singapore and others. Can it take 10 years for Kenya to be a first-class country?
I think we equally need not to be so ambitious, because sometimes, you know, when we make these political statements, it is to hype that whatever narrative. But it is possible. Nothing is, you know, at independence, actually, we were loaning even South Korea. You can imagine, we gave South Korea a loan of around, I think, $7 million. Kenya loaned South Korea. The issues of corruption, and we will still shout to the top of our voices that corruption is the greatest enemy of us becoming a first world country. It is possible. Kenyans are very intelligent people. Kenyans are techno-savvy. Kenyans are very industrious. Kenyans are very meticulous in terms of when they want to decide to do something. And then if we get the best and good leadership, and we get enough good environment where people are allowed to thrive without really tying everything to be to the political side, that if it is the issue of political correctness is still a challenge that would really mar that dream of becoming a first world country. But it is possible. I cannot say that it's not possible. But the issues of corruption, and then the issues of good governance, the ethical leadership, the ability of those whom we gave an opportunity to lead us, to help us realize these dreams. There must be people that understand the role of leadership. There must be people that have that sense of self-introspection and know that when I'm getting into this political office, what is required of me, and what is I must be a person of character, and what character. You know, there must be a lot of self-discipline. There must be a lot of the integrity bit of it, which be entirely lacks in our system, at least for now.
But for example, you say corruption. And in the former regime, the president then, President Uhuru Kenyatta, told the country that the country loses at least 2 billion Kenyan shillings
per day,
on a daily basis. So what should the ordinary Kenyan do?
I think Kenyans are not limited in terms of what they should do and how to deal with this. We have institutions of governance that are charged with the mandate of ensuring that issues of corruption are dealt with. And these pilferages that is happening within the government agencies, because corruption is still there even as we speak. The government is still losing some money through shady deals. We have corrupt individuals. We have skewed tendering processes. So these are the things that Kenyans must ensure that they put the leadership to task. Because if we have an EACC that is just given an investigative powers, but are not given prosecutorial powers, then we are still far away from achieving what we need to achieve. Therefore, that is why the agencies, the multi-agency that deals with the issue of corruption, the EACC, the DPP's office, the judiciary, these institutions must ensure that they do not fail Kenyans. So if at all there are certain things that need to be done to ensure that we do not allow any space for corruption to permeate within government or even the offices, then we really need to tighten those bolts and nuts and ensure that we do not allow public funds to be misused, and also the government services to be favoring certain individuals based on their political inclination.
And do you think that the current government is the one that Kenyans need to transform the country?
The governments always come and go, and the government is a collectivity of sorts. We have institutions. We have those who are running those institutions. We have certain individuals. We have certain processes that actually become as a government whole in the very sense of the word. And therefore, I think the government of the day has really tried, but has not achieved what were the expectations of Kenyans when they went to the ballot in the August of last election. So therefore, I think what needs to be done, because we are again approaching, actually we are almost in another electoral cycle, where the politics will take center stage and will really dominate each and everything that is being done. People will look it in terms of how will it bring votes, or how will it make the Kenyans to lean towards that certain political formations. So I think Kenyans, when we are going to the next elections, that we really need to ask very tough questions. And then more importantly, during vetting of various individuals, Kenyans must ensure that they really participate constructively, so that if there is an individual indeed that actually do not meet or do not fit the bill or occupying a certain political office or government office, a state office or public office, then we must say so. This issue of our person or our man or the person from our region, these things do not really help. Because in most occasions, more often than not, you realize that sometimes those who give us solutions are not basically those who come from the regions where we come from, and basically maybe do not really have the same political inclination as we are, but ultimately they come up with certain suggestions, certain procedures, certain processes that are really ensuring that we achieve the desired effect.
And I think I need just to ask you about this, and it's a political question. The other day, the chairperson, not the chairperson, but the party leader of ODM, while being interviewed by one of the media stations in Kenya, said that if ODM is going to a pact with the UDA, they must not settle for less than the deputy president. Do you think that they have the muscles to win that a seat of the deputy president?
That is a thing, something that depends on a lot of considerations. And one is the stability within the party itself, and how best the leadership will conform, because ODM as a party has a manifesto and there are certain things that they stand for. The UDA or the Kenya Kwanza coalition is also what they stand for. So how best they would have to marry these manifestos so that they become one is what would matter. And more importantly, and when you are to be given a deputy president position, there must be the element of which voting bloc are you coming with. So that is why I indeed have always advised that if at all the ODM is serious of securing the deputy president position, they must strengthen the party. They must not have these infightings that makes some people to think that let us leave, let us walk out, let us form our own party. If that happens, then we will not be able to get it, because we must be remain a strong and a united Orange Democratic Movement, other than a fragmented or where people are actually losing hope, or where certain leaders seem threatened. So if they are to get that, it calls for a lot of strategy. But with the current happenings, where people are you find the likes of Chairperson Omanga, they are pulling this side, saying certain individuals are no longer now welcomed in the party because they stand for this, so they said this. You find the body saying, the crocodile that you have what. You see, those kind of things are not really going to help. They must ensure that they remain united, and steadfastly so, to an extent that where the regions where we had that numbers, we still now need to consolidate and actually try to persuade other people and those who have certain political organizations, yes, to be persuaded that ODM fits the bill and is the place to be, so that we increase the number, so that we can get that bargaining chip.
Yeah, indeed. Thank you so much for gracing our show today. That is Mr. Charles Omanga, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a prolific lawyer, joining us here at Red Ring Media, his view. And of course, these are some of the programs that we'll be having here at Red Ring Media. Do stay tuned on our YouTube platform. Make sure that you subscribe, like our videos, and of course on our Facebook channel and even X. Thank you so much. My name is Emmanuel Ouma. Good evening.